The following program is furnished by Constellation Communications and is responsible for its content. Welcome to this week's edition of Leading the Way, powered by the Institute for Corporate Productivity. Influential people, high-performing organizations, creating a culture of success. And now your hosts, Scott Murray and Angel Carlton.
Hello, everybody. Great to have you along on this Sunday afternoon, our debut edition of Leading the Way. And we're going to be here till 5 o'clock this afternoon here on 570 KLIF, addressing issues of leadership, culture, productivity, success, among other things. My name is Scott Murray, and with me is the woman who will be my co-host in the weeks ahead, Angel Carlton. Welcome.
Hi, Scott, and thank you. I am most excited to be here, and I'm really looking forward to these meaningful conversations we're going to be having on Leading the Way with these highly influential people who represent these high-performing organizations. And what's going to be so great is they're sharing with us their secrets for success, their valuable insights that we can all learn from.
And, of course, one of the people who continues to be rather iconic, has an incredible legacy with his family, is going to be joining us shortly. And I'm talking about Clark Hunt, the owner, chairman, CEO of the NFL Kansas City Chiefs. Welcome back as we welcome a very special guest, a man that has worn many hats in his lifetime, owner, chairman, CEO, philanthropist, and also a longtime friend, and I certainly cherish that relationship. His name is Clark Hunt. Clark, how are you on this Sunday afternoon?
Scott, it's great to be on with you. Really looking forward again to spend a few minutes visiting with you and Angel.
Well, I tell you what, we're looking forward to it as well. Let me tell the listeners a little something about you. I'm sure they recognize the name Hunt, and certainly Clark Hunt, chairman, CEO, part owner of the NFL's Kansas City Chiefs. He's also a founding investor and owner in Major League Soccer. Also oversees the operations of FC Dallas. That's right. He's a busy guy and certainly well involved in the world of sports. Also chairman of the Hunt Sports Group, and his grandfather, if the name sounds familiar, the oil magnate H.L. Hunt. His father was the late Lamar Hunt, the founder of the American Football League, which I'm sure many of you football fans well know became the American Football Conference after merging with the NFL, which became the NFC under the umbrella of today's NFL. Well, you kind of get it. And, of course, that was the beginning of the Super Bowl half a century ago. It's hard to believe it's been that long now. And Clark, although a lot of folks might not know this, but it was your dad who coined the term Super Bowl, I think after he saw you kiddos as youngsters playing with a Super Bowl back in the 60s. Is that not right?
Yeah, that is right. My mother had purchased some Super Bowls, which were a new product produced by the company Whammo for my older brother and sister and myself as well. I was about 2 years old at the time, so I don't know how much playing I was doing. I was probably gnawing on my Super Bowl. But for some reason, the Super Bowls stuck in my dad's head, and during the merger negotiations between the NFL and the AFL in 1966, my dad combined Super from Super Bowls with Bowl, which he was a big fan of attending college bowl games, particularly the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. And he just put the two together in a meeting and said it, and everybody stopped and looked at him. And from that moment on, they adopted it and began internally calling it Super Bowl. Now, it took the league several years to finally adopt it, primarily because the commissioner, Pete Rozelle, thought the name was unsophisticated. That's why the first three championship games were called the AFL-NFL World Championship game, but finally by Super Bowl IV, the league had adopted it, and the rest is history.
Now, wasn't Super Bowl IV, now I'm really going bad on memory, that was the year after the Joe Namath, that was Super Bowl III. Super Bowl IV, the Kansas City Chiefs won, didn't they? Didn't they win the championship?
They sure did.
That's what I thought.
Played the Minnesota Vikings in that game, and it was technically the last game between the AFL and the NFL before the merger was complete. So for my dad, in a whole lot of ways, it was very much a fitting end to the 10 years of the AFL.
That's great stuff. In long before you were born, Angel, right?
Yeah, right. Well, I love that story, the Super Bowl. That's a great story.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Really, a lot of people just don't know that's where it came from.
To be such a big part of our culture today, the Super Bowl, that term, and where it came from. I love it.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. Mm-hmm. Your dad was certainly one of my favorite people. Smart, humble, incredibly genuine, a real gentleman. Kind of like a Byron Nelson or a Roger Staubach, just the really creme de la creme. And reason enough why I got him, as a matter of fact, to do the foreword of my first book. I don't know if you knew that or not. Yet since his passing, it's been about 10 years, I think, you've never missed a beat in picking up the torch and moving forward with everything that he was a part of and what you're a part of today. And so I just wondered, as we start things off here today, when you talk about leadership skills, what comes to mind for you that maybe you learned from your dad and to this day have become a part of the leadership skills that you try and share with everyone in the organization? Anything that comes to mind?
Well, Scott, as you've referenced, I did have a very good role model in my father. He was a tremendous leader, and something that I noticed about him throughout his life is people were willing to do almost anything for him. And I figured out over a number of years that the reason people were willing to do that, whether they were employees or just people he met on the street, was because of the way he treated people. He truly was a humble man, and somebody who treated everybody, no matter their station in life, equally. And he used that quality to motivate not only his employees, but people that he was trying to do business deals with. For example, we talked a little bit ago about the merger between the AFL and the NFL. There was a lot of animosity between the two leagues. But I believe my dad's humble personality really helped get that deal done and made the NFL what it is today. So he taught me a great deal about leadership, but that one principle was really the most important thing is how you treat the people that you meet with and the people that work for you on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's really good stuff, and I would totally agree with everything you said when it comes to your dad.
Oh, I second that as well. I mean, being a leader, there's so much to keep in mind, and how you treat other people and how they perceive you is so important as well. And I totally have a passion for leadership development in every way. And I know great leaders are often affiliated with being great decision makers too. And you alluded to that. A lot of CEOs, corporate America, they are forced to make some crucial decisions every day. And as a leader in the public eye, Clark, how do you approach making those tough decisions that may not please everyone?
Yeah, well, being part of professional sports, and our family's involved with Major League Soccer in addition to being involved with the NFL, it's a given that you're going to have to make some very tough decisions that sometimes you'd rather not make. But I always approach it from a perspective of integrity and trying to treat our employees and our customers the best we can. That was another lesson that my dad taught me, was the importance of our customers, which, of course, in the sports business, those are your fans. And he really put those fans first. And I think that carried over to his decision-making and certainly has to mine. When we get to a juncture where there's a tough decision to be made, I really think about the fans and what's in the best interest of our fans.
Yeah, and you mentioned the name or the word integrity. You talk about your dad and you talk about yourself, and you can see that. It's very obvious the way you both have handled that during the course of the year or through the years. So speaking of characteristics of a great leader, I just wondered what maybe might be some of the practices that you help maybe anticipate and act and try to adapt to. In other words, here, let me put it this way. One of the buzzwords you hear in corporate America a lot these days is agile. The ability to be agile and have that agility. Do you kind of know where I'm coming from in that respect? Do you deal with that at all when you talk about great leaders and some of the characteristics and how they would unfold in different organizations?
Well, I do think it's very important to be agile or have the ability to adapt to the circumstances you're in. I also think it's important to have a set of core values that you can always go back to, because the times will change, but those core values are always going to help you through whatever kind of decision you have to make. And I watched my dad do it for many, many years, and it's something that I've tried to incorporate into my own decision-making as I lead the Chiefs and our MLS team, the FC Dallas.
Yeah, and very understandable. And My gosh, I had that later on in the program, but talk about FC Dallas and all that you've done for soccer, not only here in this area in North Texas and up in Carlton County area, Frisco and what have you, but what you've done across the country. I mean, it's just great the way you've taken this sport as well as the NFL and just taken it to another level. Good for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, our family first got involved with soccer back in the late 1960s when the North American Soccer League was founded. My dad bought the team for Dallas. It was called the Dallas Tornado. And that team lasted for about 15 years, which was about as long as the North American Soccer League lasted. Unfortunately, my dad's vision for the sport at that point was probably 40 years too early. And the league folded in the early 80s, and we were out of the soccer business for over a decade. But when the World Cup came to the United States, my dad was all too eager to get back involved. That was back in 1994. Mm-hmm. And part of the U.S. bid for the World Cup included starting a Division I pro soccer league. And Alan Rothenberg, who headed up the World Cup effort here in the U.S., met with my dad. He was one of the first people that Alan knew he needed to talk to, and my dad was very excited to get back involved. I was already working with my father at this point, so I really had a chance to be there on the ground floor, help my dad get the league off the ground, and I would be lying if I told you it was easy. It gave me great insight to what my dad had done many times in terms of founding sports leagues, most notably the AFL that merged with the NFL, as I referenced. But anyhow, we made it through the tough years with Major League Soccer, and the growth over the last decade has been tremendous. We're up to almost 24 teams now, with plans to expand to 28 here in the coming years. And our franchise in Dallas, which is called FC Dallas, is really thriving up in the Frisco area.
Well, I tell you, all you have to do is go up there and you go, my gosh, I mean, Frisco, with everything that's going on up there, is over the top anyway. But what you have done up there is just good for you. It's special.
I could imagine. I could just only imagine what it's like to start an entire sports league. What's involved with that?
Well, the AFL and the soccer, it's amazing what they have done. Yeah, good
tremendous.
Stuff.
Yeah, and core values, as you said, I'm sure play a key role in the success of that and doing it the right way. And I know, Scott mentioned a buzzword in corporate America, and agility is certainly a buzzword today, and so is transparency. I4CP is a company that researches these people practices, and their studies show that high-performing organizations practice transparency with decisions prior to sharing them with the general public. I mean, how does transparency help or not help you, especially having to deal with the media as much as you do?
Sure. Well, transparency, I think, is more important today than it's ever been in running really any business, but I'll speak to it specifically from the perspective of the sports business. First of all, your employees, both on the business side and the sports side, need to be part of the decision-making process. I referenced earlier that there are many tough decisions to be made in running a sports team. And if you have your key people within the organization both informed and part of the decision, you have a greater chance of the decision, if it's a tough call, ultimately turning out successfully. At the same time, our fans have become much more interested in transparency, and I think the digital world that we all live in has really caused that. Mm-hmm. They want their information quicker. They want to see behind the curtain. They're not content anymore just to come to the games on Saturday or Sunday and be a fan of the team that way. They really want to feel that they're part of the organization. And fortunately, through digital media, you have an opportunity to reach out and include your fans and help them feel that they're more a part of the organization.
Oh, I totally agree. As a football fan, that is what's so beautiful about all the social media today, because you know what's happening minute to minute through Twitter feeds. And yeah, I totally agree. Great point. Thanks, Clark.
the Hunt family continues to do wonderful things, not only for us here in the North Texas area, but all around the country. And, of course, up in Kansas City, it's the Chiefs that they cheer for, not the Cowboys. So I do want to talk about this as we move forward with some of the things that we've shared with you thus far, Clark. Do you have a corporate culture that would be like, say, coaching, or maybe I could better term it a corporate coaching culture beyond the sports franchises? In other words, what does it look like for your employees who are not athletes? How do you deal with that whole thing? You're doing this with one group of people. You're talking to the NFL and your coaches and your coaching staff. Then you have to go over here and do this with your employees, with the Hunt Sports Group. I just wondered how the dynamic of that, how you balance that whole scenario.
Well, I think one of the lessons that I've learned over the years is even though professional athletes and people who are working on the business side come from very different backgrounds, they really like being treated the same. They like being treated with integrity. They like being treated with honesty. They want to know exactly where they stand with the organization, even when the news is not necessarily good. And if you're willing to do that and then to give them the resources to be successful, the people are really the strength of the business. And in the sports business, you're not going to be successful unless you have the best people and you empower them to use the skills that they have. And I find that works both on the sports side as well as the business side.
And you definitely pegged it when you said, keeping those employees is part of those decision making and keeping them involved in that transparency. I know that having that type of coaching culture is so important in high-performing organizations. One of the things that corporations are struggling with today is employee engagement, especially while they're navigating change, any kind of change. From what we know right now, corporate America is undergoing some major transformation in it, and there are no signs of it slowing down anytime soon. With some of the changes that often occur in professional sports that we see in the media every day, what are some of the practices that help your teams and your employees, even the athletes, stay motivated and engaged?
Well, I've had the pleasure of working with some outstanding coaches over the years, both with the Kansas City Chiefs and with FC Dallas. With FC Dallas, we're very lucky to have Oscar Pareja as our head coach. He's regarded as one of the best in the business. With the Chiefs, over the last 20-plus years, we've had Marty Schottenheimer, Dick Vermeil, and we now have Andy Reid. And I've learned a tremendous amount from those coaches and the way that they treat their employees, which, of course, are the players. And it comes back to treating them with honesty, with letting them know where they stand in the organization, and motivating them to go out there and use their God-given skills to help the organization succeed. And I think if you take those traits, they'll work in any business. People want to be respected. They want to be part of the decision-making process. They don't want an autocratic leader. They want somebody who's inclusive. And that's a great lesson that I've learned from those outstanding coaches.
Great point. And that is key. Inclusivity is huge today in where we're heading in the future with being successful in running any organization. And that's what these studies are finding. You're ahead of the game.
It's funny, and you mentioned that, what you just made note of, Clark. I'm just kind of curious. Have you seen a large difference, or maybe are there one or two things that come to mind, not just with the NFL and pro football, but just in general, the working world and corporate America and wherever it might be, how it has changed from what it was when you were a student, say, at SMU, to now running all the things that you do and overseeing everything that you're a part of? Are there one or two things that have really been drastic changes to where our world here is in the 21st century and what it was like before that?
Well, I think it's certainly faster paced today. There's always been change, but the pace of change is much faster today. And really what's happening in the technology field, what's happening with digital media and social media has really accelerated the pace of change. In the sports business, one of the areas that's shown up is is in the old days, you knew who the media was. The media was a defined group of people who covered the team. It was the sports writers and sportscasters. Today, the media is a much bigger group. In fact, at times, your fans are part of that media as they comment on what the organization is doing or what someone has said about what the organization is doing. So I think that's really a big change. It's something that I don't see slowing down. I think the pace of change is going to continue to accelerate. And any organization, sports or otherwise, is going to have to be able to adapt to succeed.
That's a great point with you talking about social media and what have you. Everybody has an opinion and can share that opinion literally with the world, can't they?
They sure can. And in the old days, a lot of the opinions were fact-checked. And today, nobody fact-checks anything anymore. They just put it out there and things take off. And your public relations department really has to be on their toes to try to manage those situations.
Well, as we head down the home stretch here, Clark, we've got 2, 3, 4 questions yet to go. And I think about when we were talking about getting ready to speak to an owner of an NFL team, the first thing that came to mind is every season, unlike corporate America, even though they're trying to stay ahead of the game every single day, trying to be as profitable and creative and successful as they can be, you have to really start all over again every year. You have 4 months, September, October, November, December, to prove yourself, to get to that ultimate game, the Super Bowl, to prove to your fans, to your friends, to the whole world that you're either a champ or a chump, so to speak. And it doesn't matter who you are. You have to kind of reinvent yourself more than most organizations or corporations in America. So my question is this. When you talk about innovation and innovating yourself year in and year out to be the very best you can be, whether it's coaches, whether it's players, whatever it is, just the whole focus to stay ahead of the game and ahead of the competition. How do you deal with those strategies? How do you keep that in mind in what you have to do? That's an awfully tough task, I would think, to have to literally reinvent yourself every year if you weren't the Super Bowl champ.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even if you were the Super Bowl
champ. Right. Good point.
Challenge of coming back to the next year. One of my dad's favorite sayings in the off season that he liked to share with his fellow owners was that we're all undefeated right now.
Right.
And he was exactly right. And going into the season, and I think this is true in Major League Soccer, and it's definitely true in the NFL, every fan base has a lot of hope in the off season. Those leagues are set up so that teams that were not successful the year before have a chance to improve and possibly end up being in the Super Bowl the following year. So the off season is a time of great hope. But a big change over the last 10 years is the amount of work that goes into the off season. If you go back 20 years ago, there was a time for the players and coaches really to take time off. Because there's so much focus on being successful during the season, the coaches, the players, and really the entire organization has to work extremely hard during the off season to make sure that they're prepared when the team gets to training camp. And I think you've heard people say it seems like the NFL really doesn't have an off season anymore because you go from the Super Bowl to the combine to free agency to the draft, and all of a sudden you're in training camp. And look at where we are right now in the middle of July, and training camp's right around the corner, and it's hard to believe because it seems like last year's season just ended a few weeks ago. But that's just how fast-paced it is and how much focus there is on trying to be successful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you think, another year, just clean slate, let's start fresh. You make a good point. There's stuff going on between the time that last season ends and the new season begins. And it's not as easy as just fresh new start. Here are new strategies moving forward. As I read a little bit about you, and we know your family is most benevolent and you're involved with all these nonprofits and philanthropy. What drives your commitment to being so involved with the community and give back? Where does that come from, Clark?
Well, that's another one of those lessons that I learned from my dad. When he brought the Chiefs to Kansas City in the 1960s, early 1960s, he made a point of ensuring that the entire organization was giving back to the community that was supporting the team. And that's something that's been passed down over the years from coaching staff to coaching staff, from our players, from our veteran players to our young players. And it's a point that I make to our teams every year. When the new players come in, I share with them that that's just part of the legacy of the Kansas City Chiefs. We've been very blessed with the Chiefs to have 5 of our players win the Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year award, which recognizes players for not only their contributions on the field, but what they do in the community. It's the most number of players to win that award from any one team, and something we're proud of. But I think it's just part of the culture, and it was really something that my dad made a founding principle of the Chiefs in Kansas City, and we've carried that over to FC Dallas in the Frisco and greater Dallas community as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. That brings up a good point. You've got these young men coming into the NFL from college. How are you developing them as leaders to be leaders in the community? Is there some training that takes place, life skills training for them to adapt to that spotlight?
There sure is. That transition is a very difficult one for many of those players. Many of them may have come from very tough backgrounds, and for them to go from a college campus environment to the NFL and everything that's associated with that, in terms of the financial resources and the attention that they receive, is very, very challenging. The league, the players union, and all 32 teams have a myriad of programs designed to help those players make that transition. And it's tough. And a lot of times players do struggle and make mistakes. They are young men learning their ways. But we work very hard to teach them life skills, help them become the leaders that they can, not only on the football team, but leaders in the community who can make a difference for everybody that they come into contact with.
You were talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, and it made me think the Dallas Cowboys came here in 1960. Well, those Kansas City Chiefs used to be the Dallas Texans, and I'm sure there's some listeners out there that aren't old enough to remember those days, but they both came here in 1960, and then your dad took the Texans to Kansas City in 63. But if memory serves me right, did you not win the championship in 62 before you left, didn't you? Didn't the Texans win the championship? I was thinking they did.
They sure did.
That's what I thought.
62 AFL championship.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Against the Houston Oilers.
Right.
That game was played in Houston, and for many, many years, it was the longest professional game ever played.
Really?
Went to multiple overtimes, but before there was a winner of the game.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, as we get ready to wrap up, I've just got one more question. Angel, you've got a question? Okay, let me just ask you this. I would imagine there are lots of folks out there would love to be in your shoes, especially sports fans that all you get a chance to be a part of in the NFL and with the Kansas City Chiefs. And, of course, you've already made note of on several occasions here tonight or this afternoon about all that you do with soccer. So I just wondered, what do you enjoy most about what you get a chance to be a part of every single day? As an onlooker, somebody thinks, "Ooh, gee, that's kind of neat. Ooh, that's kind of nice. Oh, he gets to go to the Super Bowl every year." How about for you? What is the reward for all that you're a part of every single day in your life? When you drive home from the stadium, or you drive home from the office, and you look behind you, and it's you and that's it, you against the world. I just wondered what it is that you cherish most.
Really, the best thing about being involved in the professional sports business is the people that you get to work with, not only with your teams, but really across the different leagues. We have a bunch of great partners in the NFL and Major League Soccer, and I enjoy working with them to help grow the businesses. And then back home with the Chiefs and FC Dallas, I love working with our employees to try to pursue our goal of being a champion. There's really nothing more fulfilling about the business than working with great people.
Well, isn't that the goal
understood.
after all?
Absolutely.
We all want to
You had one
be
final thought?
champions here. Well, I guess I just want to know, if you could leave us with a closing thought, Clark, what would it be?
I think going back to the question that we were just talking about, a lot of people are interested in the professional sports business, and I would encourage them to pursue their dreams. Professional sports has grown dramatically as an industry over the last several decades, and there are lots of opportunities to get involved with the business one way or another. Everybody who becomes a head coach or a general manager or an owner started somewhere, and usually it was not very high up the ladder. In fact, my first job was as a ball boy. That was how I broke into the Kansas City Chiefs, if you will. So if you have a passion, pursue it, and your dreams will become a reality.
Thank you. Perfect.
Well, I tell you what, I can't thank you enough, Clark, for taking the time to stop by this afternoon. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you, and the NFL training camp, as you alluded to a couple of minutes ago, less than 2 weeks away. So we certainly wish you and the Chiefs and certainly your entire family all the best during the upcoming 2017 season. And I'm sure, and I say this with great sincerity, if your dad's looking down right now, he is most proud of how you continue to conduct yourself and carry on the family legacy. You've done it well, and you continue to do so. So thanks, my friend, for stopping by today.
Scott, Angel, my pleasure to be on with you guys this afternoon.
All right. Thank you much. Clark Hunt, our special guest. And we're delighted that you chose to be a part of our inaugural show this afternoon, Leading the Way. How about it? You have a good time?
Oh, it was so much fun. And wow, Scott, I totally see how you have so much respect and admiration for Clark Hunt, his late father, Lamar, and his entire family that you have spoke of. What a positive and influential person he is.
Yeah, he's a good man. And you mentioned Lamar, his dad. He was just like his dad. Clark certainly is someone that I guess best put has really made an impact and continues to make an impact, whether it's in the National Football League with the KC Chiefs, whether it's in soccer, philanthropically. He just simply gets it all done and does it well.
Mm-hmm. It's extremely evident. And speaking of being impactful, next week we are talking with the one and only Phil Romano.
Boy, you talk about one and only, that's for sure, huh? What a character he is. Phil is one of the most creative and innovative restaurateurs in America, though. And when it comes to dining out, you can go to all his concept restaurants and what have you, and you say, my gosh, who was it? Phil Romano.
Join us next week, 4
We're done.
o'clock,
This
right
is where
here.
we get to say goodbye.